Good afternoon, everybody. My name's David Hart. I'm Performance Director with British Gymnastics. Thank you very much for joining the session today, and thanks to the FIG for inviting me along to have a conversation with you. And it will be a conversation, hopefully before too long you can get up out your seats and mix with some people that you might not know already. This certainly isn't going to be an exercise in me just talking to you, although I am going to share some thoughts that I do have. So why I was interested in taking the role of Performance Director with British Gymnastics was because I feel that not just in gymnastics but in sport generally, we're going through a bit of a change just now. I think how we go about winning really matters. I think it's important. I don't think we're any longer to be defined by just winning medals. And I think it's a really exciting time to join a sport that has that at the forefront of its mind, more than many others actually, certainly back home in Great Britain. The session now, I'm going to show you a video in a moment, and then I'm going to ask you to discuss in groups how we might help our coaches and gymnasts work together to share the leadership, to ensure that everyone has a voice in creating world-class performances. I'd like to give you some examples of what we're currently thinking in Great Britain, and then take any questions that you might have. Before we go any further, when I do give examples, I'll purposefully do so from the perspective of my country. This is because I understand that culture does vary from nation to nation, and I don't want to suggest that my beliefs based on what we consider right in Great Britain are necessarily applicable to all nations. But I do think that as an international community, we all recognise the need to focus on the future of our sport together. When I make negative references to things that might have happened in gymnastics, I am doing so on the basis of experiences in Great Britain as well. I'm not here necessarily to preach to you as to what you should do back home, more to offer you some thoughts. I really believe that we should celebrate what makes each of our nations unique, underpinning what I've just said. What is culture? Although I'm about to present on culture in high performance, I'm yet to find a definition of culture that makes me think, yeah, that's the one. I think it's a really broad topic, and what culture means to one person will differ to another. I've heard it summarised very nicely as culture being the space between two people. And that's our definition that I'd like to use for this session, particularly as we're talking about the relationship specifically between coach and gymnast. Okay.
Max Whitlock takes the bronze. First all-around medal for 108 years. Max Whitlock is the floor Olympic champion. It's just remarkable what we are witnessing here.
Bryony Page is an Olympic silver medalist for Great Britain.
Great Britain's Lewis Smith, he takes silver. Lewis Smith, four-time Olympic medalist now. Max Whitlock is now a double Olympic champion.
Victorious in Rio.
It's an historic bronze for Great Britain's Amy Tinkler. 7 medals for Great Britain, and Niall Wilson is one of them.
I would give up that medal to not have gone through what I did.
Yeah, it was great. I got to the Olympics, but at what cost?
A brutal culture inside the sport.
Culture of silence, a culture of just accepting that these things were the norm.
Culture of abuse and intimidation.
And it gets to the point where you don't want to talk about it, you don't want to tell them that you're sore or you're injured for the fear of them being disappointed and them shouting at you or them ignoring you because they can't handle that.
Fear or scared of speaking out, and if I voice my concern, I may affect my selection for the Olympic Games. I'm scared talking to you. It's because my incident this year, this last 6 months, highlights that there's still a challenge in the culture of gymnastics, and it starts at the top.
Back in 2016, we celebrated 7 medals for Great Britain in gymnastics, and our gymnastics team contributed to our Great Britain Olympic team, finishing second in the medals table. It was amazing. We celebrated it and we were so proud, but we realised quickly after the 2016 games that we had a lot to learn about how we went about winning those medals, which is why we're having this conversation today. I don't believe that coaches are bad people. Our system is responsible for much of the poor practice that was referred to in that video clip. And now clearly there are exceptions where individuals have got it very wrong, and I'm not talking about that. Sport at its core is meant to be a humanising experience. And as it evolved in Great Britain, during the Industrial Revolution, sport was meant to be an escape from working in a factory, working at a machine, escaping from being mechanised man. And somewhere along the line since then, I think that sport and gymnastics has become that factory, and it has been dehumanising. A coach having leadership in a setting, command over a training session, isn't a bad thing. But the worst mistake that gymnastics has made is not empowering coaches to lead, but in denying the gymnast the ability to contribute to that leadership. Having a voice, being able to challenge and make a meaningful contribution to the holistic development of the individual that includes gymnastics, but doesn't define the person. And examples that we've experienced of this playing out at home is in areas such as hydration, weighing gymnasts, academic education, nutrition, flexibility, pain and injury, and training load. In these areas, when it hasn't been done well, it has been due to the gymnast being on the wrong side of a power dynamic that hasn't been used effectively. Now, to repeat something I said earlier, a coach leading a session is a good thing. We know that without appropriate command, there's a fundamental safety issue. But there's a step often missed, and that's the gymnast being able to share the accountability for what they experience and for their performances. Now, we know that in other areas of society, when people are engaged and empowered, that they're happier and they perform better. So the question we ask ourselves is, why is this not applicable in sport, and why is it not applicable in gymnastics? So you will have seen in the video at the start there that there are many negative media headlines surrounding gymnastics in the UK, and they've resulted from the way in which we have won medals on a world stage. Now, we still want to win. We want to outscore our opposition, starting later tonight. We really love doing that, and I think it's okay that we all celebrate the competition that we engage in. But there's something bigger here that I believe that we're all aspiring to work towards, and that's winning in the right way. And I think that this is what can unite us and our sport. And I think that we need to talk about it. We need to share ideas. It's more of a challenge to make a positive impact as one nation if our international counterparts aren't doing the same. And I know that many of us are. And I think what I'm saying is, where changing culture is concerned, we're much stronger together. So the purpose of what I'm going to ask you to do next is to practice talking to international colleagues about this. And by the end of the session, we'll have some information written down that we can take away back to our own federations, and that the FIG can own and use to inform future discussion. Do you mind popping the next slide up, please, Tej? So the activity, I'd like you to break into groups of 5, maybe 6 people. And I'd like you to create an aspirational headline that the sport of gymnastics can celebrate at the Brisbane Games in 2032. So we're thinking longer term and bigger picture. And this is a really poor version that you're going to completely improve on in your groups. Something that I would like to read in years to come, that gymnastics is leading the way in the holistic development of its people, that's gymnasts and coaches, and that it's a genuinely affirmative experience to be part of the sport, because I do think that a lot of other sports are going to have to learn pretty quickly soon as well. They might not yet have the impetus that gymnastics has, but I think that we all need to do it sport-wide. So the first activity, as I say, is to create a headline, and at the back of the room there's some paper for you to use as a resource. But yeah, we'll just do task 1 for now, and then we'll come back to 2 and 3. So if you could break into groups of 5 or 6, please. And yeah, have a go at setting a bit of an aspirational goal in your group, something that you'd like to this sport to be talked about in years to come. And we'll give you 5 minutes or so for that. Sorry. Okay then, order. Right, can I have a volunteer group, please, to feed back? Okay, can we have the group at the back? Yeah, seeing as you're still talking. What have you got? Just throw some words out, be fine. So that was embrace the past, and then what was next bit, sorry? That was strong, actually. It's better than I expected, since you were rushing towards the end. Who wants to follow that one? When we care for the mind and body, we can truly create the best champions. I think it might be, you know. Next group.
So we had Gym Can, that stands for Gym Canada, prioritize athletes' well-being and has their best results ever.
Do you believe that can happen?
With Gym Canada, I'm not sure, but, but yeah, I do believe it can happen.
I think the first two were really creative words, but that one there interests me because we sport in the UK has been dependent largely on the more medals you win, the more money you receive. Sound familiar? That's not entirely true in all cases, but as a general theme, it's something that we subscribe to.
How is it right now? Are they funded by the amount of medals they win, for example, in the national federation?
It's the medals are a consideration, but I think now, and this is why we feel that we've got more confidence to operate in the way that we are doing, sport is going to be funded, yes, on how successful you are performance-wise, but we also must be able to demonstrate that how we achieve those performance goals are achieved. And it's probably the first time that the Director of Sport for the United Kingdom, of our funding agency, UK Sport, has said that she's willing to see us possibly slip a place or two in the medal table if we're to get the off-the-field stuff right, which I think is hugely powerful. But just as a show of hands, just out of interest.
I have a question.
Okay.
Would your funding go down on the last thing that you said? At your head of, I don't know who said it, like you wouldn't mind in dropping 1 or 2 spots in the medal count, but if we did it the right way, it's what we're talking
Um,
Question is then, would the UK government drop the funding?
I suppose the proof of that will be experienced in time to come. As a public agent of public resource, how the public responds, like in any political sphere, I think that we need to see that. But I think that there's enough confidence right now that our funding for the LA cycle is not dependent on how many medals we win in Paris, which I think is a really powerful statement from as a stakeholder. But do we think that by prioritising well-being, there's actually a performance advantage in that? So it doesn't necessarily need to be a trade-off. Prioritise the human being. No, I don't think so either. Well, yeah, and that's something that we'd like to test. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I subscribe to that. And yet, of course, there's always going to be this debate between, can you really push in performance to get that marginal gain to achieve this element of technicality versus looking after a human being. And maybe there's a bit of concern at times that if you take your eye off that in favour of this, that you could see a drop-off in performance. But I don't think that's true. I think that we might see that our points across the board all start to improve because we're, as a community, we're prioritising this more. Last group.
Okay, so you're quoting two Team GB athletes. One says, I won a medal. The other one says, I didn't. And go along and saying, we both had beautiful stories to share.
That is really good. That's deep. Yeah. Or you can just come and work with us. Because we know there are many stories back home of poor mental health experience by coaches and athletes alike after the most successful performance on the biggest stage. Because if you don't have enough without the medals, then you're never going to be enough with the medals. And there's so many examples of people, falling off this metaphorical cliff of experiencing the high and then realizing after that there needs to be more. So I think that's a really, really powerful one. Yeah.
That it goes together. If we see that, if we make sure the journey is really good, the moments will also be much better.
Yeah.
So that came from
Oh, that's really good. Because you never forget how something made you feel, right? You might lose some of the detail. But yeah, that experience is so important for after the lights have gone down and people have stopped writing newspaper reports about you, and you're not all over social media anymore. You're just left with you and yourself and your family, and you need to be intact. Well, some really interesting points there. Fostering a safe sport environment for the future, caring for the mind and body, prioritising well-being, and medals not defining individuals. But if that's where we want to be, for the next 5 minutes, I'd like to just get a sense of how big you think that gap is between where we are right now and where we need to be. And if you can bring that to life a little bit for the room as well, to illustrate how big that gap is with one or two stories, that would be really powerful as well. So what's the gap? What's the gap that we need to bridge? That's the next task. And 5 minutes again. Just another 2 minutes, team, please. 2 minutes. Just 1 minute to go. 1 minute. Okay, can I bring us back together, please? Okay, thank you very much. Some excellent conversation going on there, clearly. This group here, you don't get the luxury of going last this time. Good. Throw it out there.
We touched on a couple of things. First is we probably don't know enough about the gap, because what we hear about is whether people won medals or not, and not enough about how they got there. So we think there's definitely a gap, but we'd like to hear more about actually people's journeys to how they got to where they wanted to be, because that was for us the most important thing in our headline. We've just reflected on the sport has become really serious as it's kind of professionalised, certainly in multiple kind of countries, and therefore it's got really serious. And what we'd like to do is just pump a little bit of fun back into it, so there's that joy and enjoyment. And then we spoke specifically about gymnastics, and we think the gap is accentuated because they're children, because they're so young. What we would like is that children, young adults, and their parents are able to reflect on their journey, and regardless whether they made it into Olympics or whether they left it in sort of age group gymnastics, they're able to reflect on it, so that they can reflect on how enriching it was as a process, that it was worthwhile, and it opened doors to them, and they got to do things they wouldn't have otherwise been able to do, regardless of whether they won or did not won. And we think at the moment the gap is how people view it, and actually people are just reflecting on how successful they were in terms of results, which of course is just a tiny amount of the time they spend within sport.
Okay. No, it wasn't waffle. We'll come on to some of the options, but I think there's definitely something around what we celebrate in sport and in gymnastics, because it's true. The headlines are always about the medals, so it feels like a gap because the other story isn't being told, right? Unless it's a bad story, unless it's got to a point where it's really bad.
Here, even though she has all the medals and she has all the results, so it means that she's still
And that speaks to you, like the point that you made previously around how you feel when experiencing something, right? If it's all geared towards the output, then it's probably less likely to be enjoyable and affirmative for someone. Next group.
Okay, so we said where we are now is that in a lot of countries, the funding structure doesn't support or prioritize well-being. It's really still focused on medal outcome and results, and quantifying those results. So that's kind of where we are now, but where we want to be is that, you know, you don't get your funding based on how many medals you won. What you get your funding based on, kind of talked a bit about. Do you want to explain what you said?
Well, no, we were just discussing alternatives then, and I don't think it's an easy question, because if you go like, okay, we're going to try to measure well-being, it can also be put up a barrier to discuss or to disclose you're not feeling well, because repercussions of funding can be that as well. Then we were thinking about how are the dropout rates, because if someone is feeling good in their environment, they should continue in that environment, and when you have more people competing at a high level, it's also good for performance. But we were still chatting about it actually.
Yeah.
We don't have clear answers here.
Yeah, there's something in that dropout as well, particularly in women's gymnastics, where if you've not achieved a certain thing by the time you've reached the ripe old age of 16, 17 years of age, then you might as well not. I think that's something that we need to change as well. Thank you. Group at the back. There's a theme there still around. You kicked off with results being the priority. Was at the start of the discussion as being the reality of the situation. Do you think we can ever escape that? We're at a World Championships now, and later on tonight, some people will be happy, some people won't be happy because of results. Do we need to reduce how much emphasis we put on results?
Or I just live my life when I want. And this is a big
And is that a gap that we have at the moment? Trust. Was it a choice or a sacrifice that you made years ago?
Oh yeah, my parties, friends, maybe family parties, many holidays. I choose training. I choose go to other city to compete.
Would you do it all over again? The same thing? Thank you.
Because it's something that strikes me. I've heard the word dream one time today. This morning when I forgot her name from Thomas More, she mentioned it once. It's the only time that I heard this word, and I think it's a really, really important key word because it's not only the athletes, young athletes, kids, it's the parents that want to project their dreams on their kids because maybe they didn't achieve, or the contrary, they did achieve also, so they want their kids to have the same. And not forget to have coaches, again, the same, who achieved as well, who didn't achieve and project their dreams on them. I think dream is a very, very, very central word that, I don't know, maybe still in my opinion, was not used that much. I think it's a key thing where it can go the wrong way, because if you want to do everything that's wrong and the weird stuff that we're talking about today, then you can support your dream. It's the right way, but the dream is the central, for me, it's my opinion, the central thing here. Don't worry about dreams, and in most cases the dream is not going to be, I want to become number 20 in the Olympics.
And whose dream should it be?
Sorry?
Whose dream? Who should own that dream? Yeah.
Who should own the dream?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that would be.
And everything
Yeah.
else should be supported as much as possible in the ideal thing.
Yeah.
Supporting the dream. And supporting, of course, is not harassment and abuse, it's not supporting it to make it absolute. It's clear. For me and most people it's going to be clear. But that's supporting the dream of the athlete. If it's the dream of the athlete.
I think so. What you've just said there summarises where, and I'll come to your group in a moment. Are we out of time now as well? Are we? 2 minutes. It has to start with the aspiration, the dream of the person, so that they can take ownership of their journey, right? And at any given opportunity that you have to recontract that, is this what you want to do? Is this what you want to choose to do? Do you want to not go to parties and not go on holiday and train? Yes, but it's having the option to articulate that and revisiting that regularly, so that the plan is the gymnast, right?
But my option is realize my dream.
Yeah, your dream. Thank you. We've just got one headline from this, one contribution from this group, and then we can sign off.
Where are we now? Is it stressful? It's a fit of like searching a fit of environment between a coach or athlete and a coach. And then we made the thinking like we have next generation coaches and we have old school coaches, and we are in a gap or a transition phase now, like maybe old school coaches want to rededicate themselves, and then you have the coaches who are from old school who think like maybe I'm in between or not, or holding back and still are at the level. And then you have the next generation coaches who say like, okay, we are there, we know what the culture is, we know what the vision is, we want to support and be an embracement for the dream of the athlete and not the other way around for the ego of the coach, because they have a palmarès, or do you say that? Palmarès, or a CV, but that's the way we are, and we made like the figurative speech, like we are in the North Sea and we want to go to a metaphor, we are at the North Sea and we want to go to the Maldives, where it's peaceful, where people can dream again, and at rest and perform and train at the best ways or the best environment.
Thank you very much. I'd love to talk more, but I'm out of time. So I've done a terrible job at managing the time. But hopefully we all feel like we've had some stimulating conversation today, and we need to keep the conversation going. But thank you for inviting me. Thank you all very much for your time.